Greetings, good morning, and welcome. It's Mind the Moment, our coffee house in the cloud, a place to come together, build community, get centered, and become a little more curious about the present moment. It is July 31st, 2020. Now, I'm digging back in time a bit for this one, but on this date, in 1703, Daniel Defoe, one-time chronicler of an earlier pandemic, namely the bubonic plague, was sentenced to public humiliation and placed in the stocks in the public square for the crime of publishing a pamphlet satirizing prominent politicians of his day. Instead of throwing rotten fruit at Defoe, which was the public's typical wont, instead he was pelted with flowers. Defoe would later go on to write, quote, "It cannot be pleasant or agreeable, and I think it cannot be safe to any just prince to rule over a divided people, split into incensed and exasperated parties," end quote. Should it ever come to pass that we find ourselves in a society divided by ideology, may we remember to defend those who speak truth to power and to always lead with flowers. I'm John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's mindfulness program, and I feel like I have been freed from the pillory, so pleased am I to be minding the moment this morning with Tara Healey, the founder and director of our program. Good morning, Tara.
Good morning, John. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you this morning.
All right, now, in just a moment, Tara will lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation. Following that, we will take a trip to the land of Q&A together and then wrap things up just around 9 a.m. If you haven't already done so, please do take a moment to open up the chat box accessible at the bottom of your screen. You can use that chat box to type in any questions or comments you might have for us. We'd love to know what's in or on your mind this morning. With that mentioned, Tara, is there anything that you would like to ask the folks at home to comment about as we...
Yeah, you know, last Friday, I asked people to share their weekend plans, something that might be uplifting and enjoyable and interesting. And so I wanted to actually stick with that question because we had so many responses. So I would ask, what are your plans this weekend, or what do you plan to do to help kind of renew and restore, to feel better, to feel connected?
All right, so while people are typing, a big thanks to everyone for tuning in and taking the time to be with us this morning and with each other. Keep in mind that only Tara and I will be able to see anything that you do type, and if we don't read your particular question or comment on air, please know that we do read and appreciate them all. And before we close, I will point out some other ways that we can keep in touch as well. Tara, if I may ask you, what are you planning to do this weekend in order to restore or revitalize?
Well, I was just chatting with my sister this morning, and she said, "Why don't you come to Mystic tomorrow?" So I think that I will most likely head down to Mystic for probably the day or overnight and come back on Sunday. And it's Sunday in the town next to me, there's a huge farmer's market, and it's really great. And I have become kind of a regular Sunday morning there. So I'd like to do Mystic and farmer's market.
It's fantastic. All right, so let's see again. Somebody is going to be recycling extra items around the home by donating. Love that. Let's see, going to the beach. That's great. Doing a bit of gardening, it looks like. Someone says, I'm going to be house sitting in a lovely place with a pond, lots of space to be outdoors, some dogs, chatting with friends, very nice. Stand-up paddleboarding, I've never done that. It always looks fun to me, but I've never pulled the trigger on it, but maybe this will be the weekend. So Tara, let me turn it over to you to take us away.
Okay, all right. So once again, welcome everyone. And let's go ahead and we'll settle into about a 10-minute meditation practice. And I always begin by saying that, you want to be in a posture that feels comfortable for you. And that could be sitting or it could be standing. So if you're standing, you want to stand in a way where you have relaxation and ease, yet at the same time, alertness. And to take the pressure off the lower back, just a slight pelvic tilt forward so that you're feeling easeful. If you're sitting, kind of same thing. You want to sit in a way that's relaxed and comfortable, yet at the same time engaged, upright and alert. So with that, eyes open or closed. And if the eyes are open, you want to gaze downward just a little bit to help remove peripheral distraction. So fine to have open eyes. If you want to close your eyes, go ahead and allow the eyes to close. And just notice your body. So kind of make any micro movements that feel supportive, that allow you to remain in a posture that is engaged, that is upright and alert, yet at the same time relaxed. So you're holding yourself in a way that is not too loose and not too tight. And just begin to notice the physical expression in your body and possibly thoughts in the mind, likely thoughts in the mind from the activity of your day so far. So what is your body offering you in terms of sensations, pulsing, vibration, temperature? Kind of where is the mind? And allowing it all to be as it is. So soften the body to the degree that you can, but no need to force anything or try to make something special happen. See if you can surrender your weight into the support of the surface, knowing that you are being held and supported by the earth beneath you. And let's begin with a deep inhalation through the nose with a bit longer exhalation through the mouth. So go ahead at your own pace as a way to begin to connect with breath sensation. So go ahead and take a deep breath in. And let's do one more. So again, on your own, deep inhalation through the nose with a longer exhalation through the mouth. And as the body is settled in to the degree that's possible for us right now, just begin to become aware of sound in the room that you're in or outside of the room, without labeling what's making it, but simply hearing. And allowing sound to remain in the background as it naturally will. Begin to bring the attention back inward to the whole body. Notice the whole body at the level of sensation, including the points of contact with the body and the surface. So either the soles of the feet or all along the back of the body. And begin to notice the rhythm of your breath. However it is fine, is perfect. You don't have to change your breath or make it different in any way. Just begin to notice the rhythm of your breath. And see if you can notice now where breath sensation is most pronounced for you. On the inhalation and exhalation, it could be the abdomen, the rise and fall, the chest, the nostrils, or just an overall sense of whole body breathing in and whole body breathing out. And finally, what's important to remember is anytime your awareness is caught by something, it could be a muscle cramp or an itch or a sound in the room or outside of the room, always leave your primary object if breath is what you're going to be working with and go to that particular thing. So if it's a cramp or an itch or a sound, bring your awareness there. Stay with it until you feel ready to return to the breath. Noticing where the mind is, softening the body, releasing any holding, and returning to your object, to your anchor. Again, noticing where the mind is, softening the body, and returning to your anchor. And as you feel ready, if your eyes were closed, allow the eyes to open. And if they were open, kind of re-engaging with your surroundings, with the room around you. So just a couple things I want to say about a practice is to always remember, and I did mention this, but I think it's worth repeating again, that we're using an anchor such as breath sensation as a way just to stabilize and steady attention, and that helps mindfulness just do its job better. But anytime your attention is pulled, it's not ever a problem. So if you have a cramp or an itch or a sound, you just leave, just let go of primary object, go to that particular thing, just use that as your anchor, and what's most important is an attitude of receptivity rather than rejection or denial, is receptivity to because so much of this practice is we're looking at how we are relating to our thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. And can we learn to relate with more receptivity and ease, ultimately? So that's just a couple things I want to add.
Well, Tara, let me follow up with that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you are moving your attention from your breath to, say, a sound or a feeling, how do you know that it's time to return to the breath?
Yeah, it's a really good question, John. Well, there's a couple things. Number one, if it's anything like a sound or a body sensation, it'll have a nature to arise, do its thing, and then it's going to move away. So for instance, if it's an itch or a muscle cramp, the instruction would be, it's strong, it's pulling you, so don't fight with the breath, let go to that thing. Don't itch the itch or try to knead out the muscle cramp. See if you can just bring kind of curious, receptive attention. And you'll notice that that itch and that cramp, whether or not you scratch the itch or knead out the cramp, it's going to go away. You will find that, and then you can return.
Yeah, and I guess that's actually a good clarifying point about why the breath is so often used as the primary anchor, because unlike the muscle cramp or the sound of the car going by on the highway or whatever, the breath is not, while it arises and falls in waves, it's not going to ever go away.
Exactly.
Or if it does, then you have bigger.
Yeah, right. It's always with us. And sometimes it's tricky to connect with breath. Some people have a hard time with it. So you can connect with body sensation, like the points of contact with the body and the surface could be an object. You could take your hands and put them on your thighs, and that point of connection could be, you could do open spacious awareness, that can be a little trickier, but it's worth mentioning that is just an open awareness to all the arisings of thoughts, emotions, sensations. So it's just a wider lens of awareness.
So one more bit on that. Is there anything that you would describe or that you would classify as being not a good anchor, as being not a good object to move your attention to?
Yeah. Well, sometimes people will ask about, and it's a different practice, but it's worth mentioning here, like, can I bring my attention to my favorite place, like the beach or, something like that? And, that's more visualization and a place where you might feel good and want to remember, and that's a fine practice. It's just that it's not related to the cultivation of concentration, which is what helps mindfulness. So I would say kind of, just understanding the distinction between like that kind of a meditation practice and what we're doing here. Music might be another thing, to possibly another object that might not work quite as well. Also, because both of these things can trigger thought. Like, oh, I want to go to a concert. I can't wait till I'm able to go back to so being careful with things that could be more triggering.
Yeah, what I have tried to do with music, and again, it is tricky and a little bit dangerous,
Yeah.
especially with like, let's say a jazz recording, where I would try to pick out like the bass tones, which it can be difficult because it might be buried or twisted up with the other sounds. But
Yeah.
the amount of concentration required to find just that sound and kind of allow the other sounds to drift to the sides can create a sort of sense of concentration. But as you say, it requires quite a bit of vigilance to maintain that focus and not to get carried away with the harmony.
It does, right, it does. But at the same time, it's an interesting thing because when you're listening to your favorite piece of music, you're not necessarily thinking of what came before that or what's going to come after that. You're generally tracking it, So yeah, I don't know if, but it's something to consider.
Okay, so I do want to make sure that folks watching
Yeah.
feel encouraged to ask Tara any questions that you might have using the chat box. While you take a moment to think and type, I will continue by asking
Yeah.
something that Tara, you and I were talking about recently. So last week, actually, you and I were interviewing the mindfulness researcher Judd Brewer, and during that conversation, he was talking with us about a book that he was reading, which is a memoir by the actor Alan Alda entitled "If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face? My Adventures in the Art and Science of Relating and Communicating." Judd told us this book was, maybe unwittingly, a phenomenal treatise on mindful communication. So in the book, Alan Alda writes, quote, "Unless I'm responding with my whole self, unless I'm willing to be changed by you, I'm probably not really listening. But if I do listen, openly, naively, and innocently, there's a chance, possibly the only chance, that a true dialogue and real communication will take place between us." End quote. So, how can mindfulness prepare us to listen with our whole selves?
Yeah, wow, that's so great, John. I love the quote. I love that quote, especially the part where he says, "A willingness to be changed." That's really, really interesting. I think when two people are in a conversation, usually what's going on is one person is speaking and the other is formulating a reaction of some kind. Like, I agree, I'm going to give you advice, I'm going to read, whatever, right? It's like, so you basically have two people that are on send, and the quality of the interaction is a little bit in jeopardy because of that. And I think we all have different habits and patterns of communicating sort of with our whole being. I mean, mindfulness can inform that because it's natural to have kind of reactivity or thoughts about what you're hearing from another person. I mean, that's just natural. What this practice can help us do is keep that at bay so that we see it. We can see that it's going on. But if we are going to be truly fully present for another human being from their perspective, we have to keep the self-talk at bay. So we see it, we keep it at bay, and we bring our whole being to that person. And I think that mindfulness can inform the willing curiosity, the kinds of interest that is required. We can also see more clearly our own desires to hold on to our views, and maybe we can relax that just a little bit in the service of the communication.
Yeah, that's interesting. And while I'm listening to you, it's occurring to me that you and I were talking the other week about the difficulty in defining flow. What people talk about when they talk about being in a flow state. Often that gets applied to athletes who are performing in their chosen sport. But I think that you actually just, perhaps without knowing it, sort of defined the idea of the flow state, which is, it's not having like a blank or clear mind, but it's having a mind that has trained itself to not get caught up in, so when the thoughts come in, you're not, you may be aware that they're there, but you're not letting them impede. And I think that is what people talk about when they talk about athletes who are able to not get in their own way, because they are they're just in and so I think a good conversation does have that sort of flow, where I might be thinking about things that or I might know that things are arising that I want to say or think, but I'm
Right.
sort of letting them stay in the background, you know?
Yeah. No, I know. It's such and our habit patterns around communication are often very deep and solidly ingrained. And it doesn't mean they can't be looked at and worked with and changed, especially when we're holding tightly to a view. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, what you're suggesting, I think, is that like every conversation is an opportunity to practice,
yeah,
to practice mindfulness.
yes. Yeah, and I think especially with the social, political, and environmental unrest that we're in right now, conversations are more intense in a lot of ways. And can we soften, open? Doesn't have to be agreement, but can we use these practices to help us align with our values and to really listen to another human being, regardless of how we feel about it?
Well, so I think that's a question that might arise when people are thinking about how they can use mindful communication in their lives is, can these skills be applied even to those really difficult conversations, the ones
Yeah.
that we might have with other people or even within ourselves about issues like racial injustice or things that
Yes.
are really quite complicated? I mean, so is that still within the wheelhouse of mindful communication? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. And I mean, I just incredibly supportive because we can go from having deep patterns and habits that aren't seen so clearly. And this practice, it shines the light on our own habits and patterns so we can see them more clearly and figure out what's useful, helpful, skillful, and what isn't, and what does it mean? I mean, I feel like to show up fully for another human being is such a gift. And if we think about our lives and who those people in our lives are that really fully listen, not to agree, but I think most of us would rather be understood than agreed with, right? And so this is what this practice helps, is to really understand another human being from the way they see it.
Yeah, and I think that could be like the gateway to becoming a good mindful listener, is to recall a time when you felt mindfully listened to, and to imagine giving that as a gift to another person.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
And as you know, Tara, I always do hate to end, but I always like to end on a good note, and I think that might be the one. Ooh, check up here. So as as folks may have heard me say before, we're back with you every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. You can find the links to these sessions and other resources at our main site at harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. If you have any questions for our experts that you did not ask during this session, please, you can send them to askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org at any time. We will get them answered. Or feel free to leave me a voicemail at 617-509-7047. Now you can see what we've been up to lately on our Facebook page at facebook.com/mindthemoment. Or you can rewatch this session, older sessions, and introductory sessions featuring none other than Tara Healey on our YouTube page. That's at youtube.com/mindthemoment. Now, I mentioned earlier that we were interviewing Judd Brewer recently. During that same period of time, we also had the chance to interview Professor Christopher Liddy, whose research focuses on mindfulness in the workplace. Now, I'm mentioning this because we're preparing to share these interviews with you soon. In the meantime, I wanted to bring forth a quote from someone whom Chris Liddy mentioned when we were interviewing him. So that person was an earlier management guru named Carl Weick. In 2003, Weick was speaking with the Harvard Business Review about what happens when people suddenly feel that the universe is no longer a rational, orderly system. Weick describes such phenomenon as cosmology episodes, which he describes as being the inverse of deja vu. In moments of deja vu, Weick says, everything suddenly feels familiar, recognizable. By contrast, in a cosmology episode, everything seems strange. An inevitable state of panic ensues, and the individual becomes more and more anxious until he finds it impossible to make sense of what is happening to him. So Weick said there is a way out of this, and that is action tempered by reflection, which to me sounds like a perfect definition of mindfulness in action. So Tara, I'd like to thank you for preparing us today to take action tempered by reflection in our own lives with your kind and wise guidance. And if I may ask just one more thing, if you could leave us with a resource that we could use as we continue to actively grow our practice.
Yeah, so two things quickly. I don't know how many people had a chance to read John Lewis wrote a farewell to all of us. And there's a last statement that I just want to read that I love. He says, "So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide." Just absolutely love that. And, again, these practices really help to open our hearts. So I love Walk with the Wind. And then in the same spirit, I'm going to offer Real Love, The Art of Mindful Connection by Sharon Salzberg. Really wonderful and highly recommended. So there's a nice chapter in here on mindful communication. But it's all about connection.
That's great.
So with that, John Lewis and Sharon Salzberg offering us wise advice for the day and for life.
It's a good pair right there. All right, Tara, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining us. We hope everyone has a great weekend and a momentous day.